It wasn't anything like those glossy scenes you see on screen, with flickering candles and strings of soft guitar pulling you under. No, this was quieter, rawer. A heavy pause in the air, eyes locking across a room that suddenly felt too small, and then something inside me just splintered. You know that feeling? The one where you're floating above your own body, watching it all unfold like a stranger's life? Your mind's yelling to turn around, to bolt for the door, but your legs? They're rooted, heavy as stone. That's exactly where I found myself. I swear I hadn't plotted a single second of it. No fancy outfit, no swipe of crimson on my lips. I was just me, barefaced and frayed at the edges. But desire doesn't wait for polish. It slips in through the tiniest gap, and damn if I didn't leave the door cracked wide open. Lord, I never intended it to go there. But when you've been adrift in your own skin for so long, when the man you vowed forever to starts glazing over the weariness etched into your grin, when the walls of your house press in colder than a winter gale, you begin grasping. Not for sparks or stolen nights, but for evidence. Proof that you're still visible, that your edges haven't blurred into nothing. And when that proof shows up in the last place you'd expect, wrapped in a gaze that pins you steady, it doesn't scream wrong. It whispers salvation, they noticed. I felt their eyes snag on me, pulling like a current. And the part that chilled me to the bone? I didn't turn from it. No blink, no retreat, I leaned into the heat. I craved it. And deep down, I knew they did too. God, how I wish I could spin this into a tale where I spun on my heel and vanished into the sensible dark. Where thoughts of my little ones flooded in, anchoring me home. But in that suspended breath, all I could feel was the hollow throb in my ribs finally easing into something alive, something tender. This isn't some saga of monsters or mindless hunger. It's about fractures. The hairline splits in your spirit that stay hidden until light catches them just right. And when someone steps close, peering into that raw space, you can't help but wonder, what if they didn't just observe? What if they reached out, lingered, claimed the broken bits as their own? This is the unraveling that happens when eyes turn watchful. And you find yourself hoping they'll never look away. Let me back up a bit, paint the picture clearer. I'm 34 now, mom to a rambunctious pair of boys who turn every room into a battlefield of toys and triumphs. On ordinary days, the reflection staring back from the bathroom glass feels like a ghost of someone I once knew. Hair knotted in a hasty bun, shadows pooling under eyes that haven't sparkled easy in years, curves that softened after the births and never quite snapped back. But it's not the surface that's shifted most. It's the core. Laughter used to bubble up unbidden, free as a summer breeze. These days, I script every curve of my mouth, measure it out like medicine. My husband, Ethan, he's no villain in this. Never raised a hand or a voice in anger. He's just gone even when he's right there. His job hauls him across state lines week after week, chasing deals in sterile conference rooms. The rare nights he's under our roof, he claims the spare bed down the hall. You toss too much, he mumbles, but I suspect it's less about my sleep and more about dodging the press of my unrest against his back. Since our second boy arrived, we've drifted into this polite orbit. More quick texts about grocery runs than real conversations that linger. The last time his fingers traced my arm without an agenda, our baby was still gummed up in teething rings and midnight feeds. Then there's Lena and Theo, the couple next door. Early 30s, all easy energy and that effortless spark that makes you forget your own fatigue. They'd wave us over for casual spreads on their deck, flames crackling in a fire bowl as dusk bled into night. Lena would uncork a bottle of red, her laugh spilling like sunlight, while Theo manned the tongs over the coals, flipping burgers with a wink. I'd perch there, letting their banter wash over me, chuckling at tales of their weekend hikes or Theo's botched attempts at sourdough. I'd tell myself I wasn't clocking the way they traded glances, playful, electric, like kids stealing kisses behind the bleachers, or how Theo's eyes would flick my way when Lena bent to refill glasses, or the brush of Lena's fingers on my knee when a punchline landed, holding a beat too long, warm and unhurried. I chalked it up to my imagination, a trick of the light. No one sizes up a harried mom of two like that, right? But the evenings piled up, and ignoring the shift grew impossible, the subtle charge humming through their space whenever I crossed the threshold. Theo always topped off my glass first, a quiet priority. Lena would scoot her chair nearer, her shoulder grazing mine like it was the most natural drift. They pulled me into their rhythm, made me feel woven in, not some faded outline on the edges. I hadn't clocked how starved I'd grown for that simple belonging until it bloomed right under my nose. Outwardly, I'd beam, all gracious nods. Inwardly, I was parched, chasing a thirst I couldn't label. I never saw that one evening flipping the switch. I'd ache for their attention, pray for the weight of it on my skin, and then without fanfare, I'd get my wish. It kicked off light, disguised as banter. The boys, mine crashing on the sectional, theirs dozing in a nest of blankets, had finally surrendered to sleep. Embers glowed faint in the pit, bottles scattered like fallen soldiers, and we'd all melted into the wicker seats, boneless and buzzing. Lena stretched out, that sly curve to her lips she wielded like a secret, and tossed out, "Time for a game with some edge, don't you think?" Theo barked a laugh, deep and rumbling. Ethan huffed one too, the awkward kind that signals you're testing the waters. I curved my mouth upward but dropped my gaze to the fire's dying pulse. Lena let it hang, no elaboration needed. The talk veered to safer shores, but her words clung, smoky and insistent, long after I'd shaken off the ash back home. A handful of nights on, it resurfaced, laced with something sharper. Same circle, but the vibe had thickened. Lena lingered over the pour, her stare threading mine steady. "I'm serious this time," she murmured, that half-grin not quite masking the undercurrent. "We could make it interesting." I let out a breathy chuckle, but it rang hollow, edged with the pull of that we, inclusive and loaded. Ethan was lost in his feed, thumb scrolling oblivion. Theo, though? His focus sharpened on us, quiet and appraising. Not predatory, just present. And maybe that's what hooked deepest. How unthreatening it all hummed, like slipping into sun-warmed sheets. Come morning, I lingered at the sink, scrubbing my face longer than ritual demanded. Dabbed on liner, unearthed a pair of hoops gathering dust in the drawer. That evening's summons arrived, another round at their place, and I swapped tees twice before landing on one that skimmed my hips with intent. Ethan, silent as stone, but the second I stepped into Lena and Theo's galley kitchen, Theo's voice cut soft. "You clean up nice tonight." Simple words, but they landed like a match to dry tinder, igniting low. Lena just arched a brow, slid my pour across the counter with a nod, like we'd synced to some wordless beat. Post-meal, plates stacked, and the playlist dipping sultry, Lena circled back. "Ever spun truth or dare without the kid gloves?" Chuckles rippled, mine included, but beneath my pulse tripped. What dare might she whisper? Why did her voice alone knot my breath? Across the flames, Theo's gaze met mine, already waiting. It played innocent, a flicker, a phantom pact sealed in the hush. But whispers don't stay whispers. They sharpen fangs, sharpen appetites, and eventually they demand a taste. I reasoned it away as idle sparks, the kind grown folks fan when routine bites too hard. I had my anchors, sticky-fingered hugs, a partner who'd co-signed my chaos, a nest redolent of crayons and crumpled socks. A full life by any ledger. Yet I hungered, not for scandal or sheets twisted in haste, but for friction, for pulse, for eyes that lit on me not as the milk run errand or the carpool savior, but as a force, untethered. I yearned to reclaim the woman who'd once turned heads. Not just the title of caregiver or spouse. One twilight after plates cleared, Ethan and Theo deep in some debate over scores, Lena drifted close, her murmur for my ears alone. We don't keep score if it eases the quiet. I laughed. It snagged. Brittle, but was it jest or key turning in a lock? I swallowed the query, afraid of the echo. But it nested, burrowing deep, until one restless hour I cracked it open. The boys slumbered sound. Ethan had crashed early, earbuds in, spine a wall between us. My screen glowed, pools calling. Slip over if the mood strikes. Easy out, stark no flourish. My palms buzzed. 10 minutes blurred as I glared at the glow. Visions warring, tiny sneakers cued by the stairs. Ethan's steady rumble from the den. The phantom steam rising from Lena's skin. Theo's easy sprawl, condensation beating on stems. For once thought choked me. Action 1. I shrugged into a wrap, padded silent through the dim hall, out into the crisp bite of night. No goodbyes, no ghosts stirred. The air nipped, but the water cradled, vapor weaving lazy ghosts above. They lounged already, Lena's tresses coiled high, Theo's torso bared, reclined like eternity stretched ahead. I eased in wordless, murmuring I'd dip quick. Lena passed a flute, her gaze velvet, curve forgiving. A low thrum pulsed from the outdoor rig, hazy, unhurried, thickening the pauses. We traded small nothings at first, then everything. Dreams half buried, laughs that vaulted into the ink-black sky. But wait, there's more to this thread than the hush after. Let me weave it further, because that night didn't seal shut like a bookended chapter. It rippled, subtle at first, like stones skipped on still water, sending circles wider than I'd braced for. Weeks blurred into routine's grind, but under the skin, everything hummed altered frequency. I'd catch myself in the rear view on school runs, tracing the faint bloom on my collarbone. Not a mark, just memory's echo. And wonder if the other... Moms clocked it, if their sidelong glances held judgment or their own veiled yearnings. Ethan, bless his steady orbit, seemed to sense the shift without naming it. Mornings grew softer. He'd linger over his mug, thumbs circling the rim as he asked about my dreams. Really listened when I spun tales of the boy's latest conquests, a fort from couch cushions that rivaled any castle. One evening, he pulled me onto the porch swing, stars pricking the velvet sky, and murmured, "You've been glowing lately. What's the secret?" I laughed it off as fresh air and early beds, but his eyes searched, gentle, probing. Did he suspect? Or was it just the old ache of us, resurfacing like a tide he couldn't chart? Lena and Theo? They navigated the new normal with grace that bordered on artistry. Invites kept coming. Picnics in the nearby hollow where wildflowers tangled the paths, or game nights with boards that demanded laughter over strategy. They'd orbit me in the group, touches feather light, Lena's hand steadying mine over a shared puzzle piece, Theo's knee bumping mine under the table with a conspiratorial grin. But eyes? Those stayed hooded, promises banked like embers under ash. No corner whispers, no late-night flares on my phone. It was as if we'd all tacitly agreed. What bloomed in the storm stayed there, a private bloom not for transplanting. Yet in the quiet beats when Ethan's back turned to snag a drink, I'd feel their pull, a shared inhale, a glance that said, "We remembered, we revered." One afternoon, rain drumming lazy on the greenhouse panes, I'd wandered over to borrow a spade. For my wilting herbs, Lena cornered me amid the ferns, her voice a low current. "It's not about stealing you away," she said, fingers trailing a leaf's vein. "It was about giving you back to yourself." Theo, potting soil dusting his forearms, nodded from across the room, his smile crooked. "You're brighter for it. We see that." No invitation laced the words, just acknowledgement, a mirror held steady so I could trace my own lines anew. I left with more than the tool, a quiet permission to carry the warmth without guilt's chain. But ripples deepen. My boys noticed too, in their unfiltered way. The elder, with his mop of curls and endless questions, tugged my sleeve one dusk as I stirred pasta. "Mom, you smile different now, like when Daddy reads that funny book." I knelt, heart swelling, and pulled him close, smelling of playground dirt and infinite potential. "That's because you make me happy, buddy. Every day." And it rang true. That night's fracture hadn't hollowed me further. It had cracked open space for more light, spilling into corners I'd long boarded shut. Bedtimes stretched longer, stories, laced with voices I'd forgotten I could muster. Pirates with gravelly roars, queens with silken commands. Ethan caught one such session from the hall, his frame silhouetted, and later, as we brushed teeth side by side, he squeezed my shoulder. "You're magic with them." Simple praise, but it landed like rain on parched earth. Still, doubts gnawed in. The witching hours, when the house creaked its secrets and sleep evaded. Was I fooling myself, papering over the rift with borrowed glow? One midnight, phone in hand, I drafted a text to Lena, fingers hovering. Does it ever echo too loud? But deleted before send. Instead, I rose, padded to the nursery, watched my youngest's chest rise and fall in moonlit rhythm. This life, fragile and fierce, wasn't for discarding. It was for tending, for pouring into until it overflowed. Months spun on, seasons turning like pages I hadn't marked. Fall painted the hollow gold, and we gathered there again. Ethan Manning, The portable grill, boys chasing leaves with Lena and Theo's little one in tow. Laughter layered thick, stories overlapping like vines. As dusk bruised the sky, Ethan draped an arm around me, pulling me to his side. "Glad we have these folks," he said, voice low. I nodded, throat tight, glancing across to where Lena and Theo mirrored us, her head on his shoulder, his fingers laced in hers. Our eyes met fleeting, a nod of solidarity, no more. In that web of warmth, I felt it. Not fracture's scar, but fusion. The pieces hadn't scattered. They'd realigned, stronger for the bend. Winter bit next, snow blanketing the yards in hush. Ethan surprised me with a weekend cabin, his firm's bonus burning a hole, he claimed, but I saw the intent in his packed thermos of cocoa. We left the boys with his sister, drove twisting roads flanked by evergreens heavy with frost. The place was modest. Stone hearth, loft bed creaking under our weight, windows framing a lake iced silver. No grand gestures, just us, chopping wood till our cheeks flushed, steaming mugs by the fire, his stories of boyhood winters pulling laughs from me unguarded. That first night, as flames popped and shadows danced, he traced my jaw, eyes earnest. "I've missed this. Missed you." I leaned in, lips meeting his with a hunger I'd banked but not quenched. It wasn't fireworks. It was hearth fire, steady and sustaining. We moved slow, rediscovering maps long folded away, his hands reverent on my hips, my nails grazing his back. Dawn found us tangled, breath sinking, the world outside a white hush. Back home, the thaw came gradual. Ethan cut travel, carved evenings for family hikes where he'd hoist the little one on shoulders, booming songs off-key. I started a sketchbook, charcoal, smudges on pages capturing the boys' wild grins, Lena's poised laugh frozen mid-bloom, even Ethan's profile etched thoughtful by lamplight. Art as exhale, pulling the inner churn outward. Lena noticed first, over coffee one crisp morn as flurries dusted the fence. "You're creating," she said, sipping slow. "That's the real yes." Theo, tinkering with his truck nearby, shot me a thumbs up, grease-streaked and genuine. Spring unfurled green, and with it, confessions bubbled. Not explosive, but easing like sap rising. One eve, post-dinner sprawl on our deck, Ethan inside wrangling baths, Lena leaned close, voice threaded soft. That night, it healed something in us too. Watching you claim your fire. Theo, feet kicked up, added, "No lines crossed twice unless everyone's map agrees." Ethan emerged then, boys trailing in jammies, and the moment folded seamless. But later, alone with him, I tested waters. "Remember our early days? The spark?" He pulled me near, brow furrowed. "It's still there. We just layered life over it." We talked then, raw, unhurried, about the drifts, the silences, the ways we'd both armored up. No blame, just bridge building. He admitted the guest room's exile stemmed from his own exhaustion, not disdain. I shared the loneliness's bite, the need for eyes that saw beyond the roles. By night's end, we lay face to face, plotting small rebellions, date nights sans screens, touches reclaimed without prompt. Summer scorched in, barbecues bleeding into starlit swims.